So for whatever reason, and I suspect they're looking at the same kind of polling that we are, they've decided the status quo doesn't work, and they're going to have to bring her out of the basement.
Yeah. Time to get out of prevent defense.
Yeah, that they're going to have to actually try to use their candidate, which is a perilous deal. If your candidate is Kamala
pretty
Harris.
terrible candidate.
Yeah, it's a perilous deal.
Prompt her out.
Uh-oh, she doesn't know.
32 days. 32 days.
I mean,
Okay, we got some business to do. All right. 32 days.
Oh my God, she did it
and
again.
we know we will do it.
Like, this is one of those weird scenarios where, you know, they always say like art imitates life, where life is imitating art, because there's a famous episode of Veep where they're doing the State of the Union, and she's now president of the United States, not vice president. Selena Meyer's up there, and the same thing happens. And she has to kill for time while she's giving the State of the Union. And now it's happening in real life.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Just a catching strays over here.
you're in for a hell of a show.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
Good Tuesday to you. Welcome back to the Ruthless Variety Program. And what is a new look here, fellas? Josh Holmes, comfortably smug. Michael Duncan, John Ashbrook, left to right across your radio dial. Boys, we got a new studio.
Yeah. Well, technically, it is the same studio, but
It's a new look.
Yeah, we've reoriented the whole operation here. Spaghetts and Wolf have now some more distance from the desk here. I mean, like depth of field.
Yes.
I'm learning things.
Yes.
We've come a long way from Duncan's little TV that was right up
Duncan's
there.
Little Game Boy TV.
I love how it's become my television. As I recall, we all sat around that thing and ate McDonald's.
You were the IT guy,
I was.
so that was technically in your jurisdiction.
Well, and now I've been promoted to sewing the merch. Yeah.
Well, congratulations. I mean, look, that's awesome.
I'm a Renaissance man. What can I say? I can do it all.
Well, listen, the hardest working team in politics had a big week last week on the Ruthless Variety Program. You all have probably seen by now the interview that we did with an ex-Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, in Michigan, where we did a little fishing in the Kalamazoo River. You've seen the interview that we did afterwards, which, look, let me get your initial reaction to all of that, since we haven't had an opportunity to do it. I thought it was terrific.
Yeah, it was amazing. We were there before even the sun rose.
Yeah.
Ready to get this thing done. And to me, the most amazing part, I mean, everyone had a blast. It's amazing. You all are going to see the footage of it. But as the sun rose, you saw out on the water about like 50 gunboats with like machine guns that would be surrounding us.
It was not an
fishing
intimate experience.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
It was the safest fishing expedition in human history. There's like helicopters, drones. You'll see all of that.
Well, which made it all the more surreal because we go through that, fishing expedition with all those distractions and all those boats, and I mean, it was crazy. You're going to love the footage from the actual fishing. And then, we do the interview with JD, and like, he's just so personable, it's so easy to chop it up with the guy. Immediately forgot that this was, an interview with the guy who is likely
Immediately
to be vice
forgot
president.
it.
You know
like
what I mean?
At one point during our conversation around that fireplace, like I got about a third of the way in, and I was like, shit, we're filming.
Yeah.
Like I forgot. I mean, we were basically just talking about what we were ordinarily going to talk about if JD's in the house. Yeah. And it was, it just sort of, it was very organic, very authentic. I think you saw that last Tuesday in the debate with how comfortable he was, not only in the subject matter, but just operationally. He was just very, very comfortable. And then you get him, 24 hours later in a different context. He's at peace. He is exactly where he needs to be.
Perfectly at ease, and it was a lot of fun talking around that fireplace. But I really can't wait for people to see what happened in the boats.
Yeah.
With so many boats on the water, you're not gonna catch fish.
No, it's right.
a lot of our listeners pointed out it's called fishing for a reason, not catching.
No, Smug and I caught fish.
Yep.
Oh,
Well,
we did pretty good out there.
You're going to see a little of that. So Thursday at 5 p.m., we are going to release a video that gives you a little indication of what it was that we were up to on the water. So that's in addition to the interview that we released last week. You can see us actually fishing, but we've got a little preview for folks. If we can go Spaghettis to clip 1A.
That is a dead fish. Look at that fish. It's a dead fish. It doesn't count.
It's a dead fish!
It has to be alive.
I think the thing's frozen.
He's got to get on this. I'd like a hand recount of that fish because none of us think that fish is actually alive.
Ballot harvesting over
Dude, it's just so good. Or that's just one little glimpse. We had a blast out there. That was you reeling in a frozen, clearly frozen.
It's a very cold lake. Early day. Fish haven't really gotten going yet.
As I said out there, it was the most secure fishing competition in history.
It was a competition that had rampant problems, systemic in nature, that allowed for fish from Costco to somehow end up in the waters of the Kalamazoo River.
It's a little ballot harvesting. That's it.
Well, either way, look forward to all of that this Thursday at 5 p.m. We will release all of that, and you can check it out. That's why you got to like and subscribe to the YouTube so you get a notification. You're not going to want to miss that. Well, while we were having fun, and while the Trump campaign had a great week, started with JD's awesome debate. We did our fishing expedition, and then culminated, obviously, in the Butler situation, which we'll talk about. The rally that Trump had and the return to the first assassination attempt, and what an incredible event that was. Kamala Harris is now starting to worry.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly,
like they're concerned. I mean, they went through July and August thinking that they could just sort of pretend like this lady showed up yesterday and has no responsibility for all that ails the United States, and then like post Labor Day, as we predicted, it's starting to come back to earth for her, and she's got to answer some questions. But they have the same basement strategy.
That's been a problem for them, because here's the thing: is initially they're like, well, we need to go into hiding. We have a friendly media that's going to try to pump Kamala, and for a minute that worked, and then I think during that VP debate it became exposed what happens when you hide from the media. You're not used to taking any questions. You saw Tim Walz up there, who was like a deer in headlights. Literally looked like a deer in headlights the whole time, because he hadn't taken like any questions from journalists. He was just an emotional support dog for Kamala during that horrible interview. And JD, meanwhile, had spent the past month at war with the media, crushing them on Sunday morning shows. And you see what happens when you go into the hiding in the basement strategy.
So for whatever reason, and I suspect they're looking at the same kind of polling that we are, they've decided the status quo doesn't work, and they're going to have to bring her out of the basement.
Yeah. Time to get out of prevent defense.
Yeah, that they're going to have to actually try to use their candidate, which is a perilous deal. If your candidate is Kamala Harris.
Terrible candidate.
It's a perilous deal. So we've got a couple of clips to illustrate that. Clip 1, if you wouldn't mind, Spaghetti.
Remember his number, 32. Today we got 32 days until the election.
Prompt her out.
Uh-oh, she doesn't know.
32 days. 32 days.
I mean,
Okay, we got some business to do. All right. 32 days.
Oh my God, she did it
And
again.
we know we will do it.
So what you're looking at is her at a rally where the teleprompter went out. She had the last line of 32 days, and then it was like it didn't go down.
So there's something I have to flag here for our audience. We played for a while on this show that game Veep or VP.
Yes.
Where we were comparing quotes from Kamala Harris with Selena Meyer from the hit comedy show Veep, where she's Vice President of the United States. And we had to stop playing that game because we ran out of ridiculous things that Selena Meyer said.
Yeah, it wasn't Kamala.
It wasn't Kamala.
Kamala was still providing content that made her look like an idiot. That wasn't the
There was
problem.
only like seven seasons of the show.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
like eventually we ran out of text there.
Yeah, and like this is one of those weird scenarios where, you know, they always say like art imitates life, where life is imitating art, because there's a famous episode of Veep where they're doing the State of the Union, and she's now president of the United States, not vice president. Selena Meyer's up there, and the same thing happens. And she has to kill for time while she's giving the State of the Union. And now it's happening in real life.
I mean, you just contrast that. I remember the old story about, I don't remember which State of the Union it was, but one State of the Union Bill Clinton had. He rolled up and the teleprompter just went blank after the first sentence, and then he delivered an hour of the State of the Union just off because he had written it and been familiar with the content, and he just delivered it without the teleprompter. If that was in the State of the Union and she was delivering it, you'd get an hour and a half of 32 days.
Yeah. So
It would take
32
32 days to talk about it.
Yeah.
And also his jersey was 32. 32 days. It was almost like I felt embarrassed for her, but then I was like, she deserves this so much. Like everyone around the world is now seeing what a puppet she is.
Yeah.
That like all she can do is read a teleprompter.
Yeah, it's like when you pour water on like some animatronic like robot.
Oh, yeah.
And it just sort of short circuits. 32 days.
32
days.
days.
32 days.
32. O.J. Simpson was 32. You know what I mean? Like getting 32. Oh, it's just so bad. But she wasn't done there. She did a 60 minutes sit down, which we predicted, by the way, was going to be one of her sit downs because it's a kid glove territory. But for the clips that were released from that, it didn't seem to go very well either, including her basically floundering on the question of Israel. Can we play clip 2?
Do we have a real close ally in Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think, with all due respect, the better question is, do we have an important alliance between the American people and the Israeli people? And the answer to that question is yes.
Okay. Is an ally and alliance? Let's just set aside that for a minute. Here's a country under existential threat this very week, and I don't know when she taped this, but I mean, last week, Iran was firing serious missiles indiscriminately into Israel, and the president, the prime minister of that country, is Benjamin Netanyahu. Like, you either stand with them or you don't. Like, I can't imagine a scenario where an American president tries to have that both ways.
And at the same time as the rockets are being fired, missiles are being fired at Israel, there's a terrorist attack where gunmen are killing people.
Yeah, I mean, this has been their modus operandi for a very long time. I mean, it was President Obama and, you know, his deputies that tried to finance a coup against Benjamin Netanyahu in the 2015 election. I know because I worked on that campaign. So, I mean, this has become dogma for, you know, the liberal establishment. And they, you know, they can't say, you know, we stand with Benjamin Netanyahu, because there is a contingency in the Democratic Party that is like a line that can't be crossed.
What a wild thing.
Yeah. Well, they need votes in Dearborn.
Oh, yeah, just completely ridiculous. So she's not done yet. It's really flooding the zone with all this stuff. She did call her daddy.
Yeah.
Which is a popular podcast. It's been around for a while. It rose to prominence on, shall we say, discussing promiscuity from a female's perspective. And it became massively popular. And it's now sort of coded as a left-wing thing because she's sort of aligned, the host has sort of aligned herself that way. And so she has a bunch of celebrities and whatnot. So we're like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I haven't, heard about that for a while because it's not exactly our demo, right? It's like a female though. Like what do they have going on? Maybe she's like changed the format a little bit from the like Barstool days where she was talking about the Gluck Gluck 9000.
Oh God,
and all of those kind of things, because it seemed like not an imperfect, should we say an imperfect fit, or maybe a perfect. I don't know. Whatever it is, it was just not. It just didn't seem like a political thing you do in October.
Different strokes for different folks.
Oy, oy, oy. And you're giving me crap. We just pulled up the last couple of episodes, graphic A. All right, so they've got something from Remy Bader. I'm not particularly aware of who this woman is, but don't call me body positive. I don't know. That sounds like maybe something that's legit that I don't know a lot about. And then the next one, Heather McMahon, blowjobs, hall passes, and frat daddies. So I was thinking about it, and like, look, we've been huge proponents of these presidential candidates getting outside of like the comfortable lines that the media draws, because you can see a little bit more personality. Mm-hmm. You can see a little bit, have a different audience exposed to a lot of these things. And we've talked about it a lot on the show. And so I thought, like, is this bad? Is this not something you should be doing? And two, I thought, Smug, if the sitting vice president of the United States and nominee for the Democratic Party now 20 some odd days before an election is talking about blowjobs, hall passes, and frat daddies, or at least in the episode afterwards, you should feel totally free to explore sexual content on this show, because I think we can stay serious.
Well, I mean, I think it says a lot that our show and our discussion has been so much focused on, let's say, the disaster affecting people in Western North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That we are not elected officials, and that we have been talking about that nonstop.
Yeah.
And the horrors that those people are going. Ashbrook's got family in Asheville.
Yeah.
All right. So our focus has been on that. But the sitting vice president who's running for the presidency of the United States is completely unconcerned.
My problem with her is that the entire focus of her life right now is publicity. It has nothing to do with leadership. And you mentioned North Carolina. I mean, there are hundreds of people who still have not been accounted for. 200,000 people without power. You turn on your faucet in North Carolina and no water comes out. Half the cell towers are down. It is an absolute disaster area. And while the storm was hitting, Joe Biden was on the beach. He was literally sleeping on the beach while people were drowning in the mountains. Mm-hmm. And what is Kamala Harris concerned about? Public relations.
Yep.
What is the media focused on? Twitter accounts. They're attacking critics of the administration's response, saying they're dangerous. I will tell you what's dangerous: incompetence.
Yep.
And
That's
we have
right.
a chance. We literally have a chance to fire her for incompetence on November 5th.
I mean,
right.
Think about the fact that, like, their response, put aside like how easy it is for Democrats to support billions of dollars, going overseas, but not to the people of North Carolina, and all that. Set all of that stuff aside. They're like, we got a deal for you. We know this hurricane's really impacted things in your community. We're going to give you $750.
Yeah.
And better yet, all you got to do to claim it, you just got to, like, find that computer that you don't have anymore because it's underwater.
The electricity we're not providing.
Like, get on that Wi-Fi that doesn't work. You fill out a form with the right TPS, and we'll file it away, and we'll let you know if you're eligible.
Yeah.
Think about how wild that is.
It's crazy.
It's the picture of government incompetence.
Yeah.
When they show up, like, think about how much of the relief effort in North Carolina has been private entities, social, like Samaritan's Purse, people flying in to provide supplies. And literally, the hurricane, the storm hit on Friday, September 27th, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris didn't respond until midweek the following week. It's outrageous.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're depending on the federal government to come to your aid when you need it, you're going to be depending for a very long time.
And then how tone deaf these, like, Kamala Harris tweets out, she was like, there's a humanitarian crisis in Lebanon. I'm sending like $700 million. And it's like, are you insane?
Well, they built the damn dock for, what was it, hundreds of millions of dollars that wasn't ever meant to go into the sea, and it promptly
it found its way into the sea when it sank.
It promptly sank.
Spaghetti, can you put up graphic B? These are other episodes recently on Call Her Daddy.
You got more?
Cheating 101.
Oh, that's good.
Maybe that one is about the election.
Oh! maybe it is politically focused.
Yeah. I should give them more credit.
I mean, leading voices in modern relationships. I don't know. It's an open question. We maybe should give it a listen, see what they're up to. Ballot harvesting and stuff? Perhaps. Yeah, no. Anyway, I mean, we're the last people to be puritanical about what it is that we talk about on a show and then having serious discussions at times. But it is, the backdrop of it is pretty brutal.
It is. It's the focus on publicity instead of leadership. Our country needs leadership. We don't need to reelect an idiot who's been ruining the place for the last 4 years.
That's right.
She's also managed to go on The View. That's a hard-hitting interview there with 4 votes in the bank.
Yeah.
Interviewing her with all of that stuff. And then Colbert, which I find incredibly hilarious that Colbert. I mean, look, I grew up in the days of Letterman and Leno, and the idea that you would have somebody who was just like a Democratic spokesperson as a late night host on broadcast television. Now, I know that it doesn't mean as much as it used to, and people don't watch it like they used to watch it, but like, can you imagine that? It seems ridiculous.
Yeah, I feel like it's a net benefit for us, though, here. And I mean, back to like what Smug was saying about JD. Like, JD is sharp, and the reason why he's sharp is he's had to interrogate his own ideas and his opinions because he faces a hostile media every single day.
Yeah.
And when you don't face that, you don't actually sharpen what your arguments are that you're going to have to take to the electorate. Like, the reason why they feel like they have to get out of prevent defense and go and talk to people suddenly is like what they're doing is not working and it doesn't resonate with people. And the reason why is because they haven't had to interrogate their own philosophy and their policies because no one's asked.
I saw a clip where Colbert asked her, like, what's great about America in her eyes? And it was like a minute and a half of some variation of, like, I grew up in a middle-class family.
I mean, she can't do it.
If you can't answer that question, get the fuck off the stage.
But it's not just Colbert and late night. Like, did you guys see the Sunday show where Tom Cotton obliterated George Stephanopoulos?
Yeah.
I mean, here is a guy who runs a Sunday show. He's a Democrat operative who turned into a Sunday show host. And when it's election time, the jersey comes on in a big way. Yep. And thank God Tom Cotton's out there, like, raising the flag, because if he wasn't pressing back against Stephanopoulos, it would just be,
I can understand why they think that he's not unbiased when you see the debate that they ABC put together. Like, he is sort of unbiased in comparison.
Yeah.
I mean, jeez, it's so bad. So anyway, we're going to get to a whole lot more right after this ad break, including Biden just won't leave Kamala alone.
Yeah,
this is one of the funniest bits that we've got going. Like, they ran an entire DNC convention being like, I don't know, she just showed up yesterday and all these problems are there. She's here to fix it. And then, like, Biden's like, nope. Like, his 2 moments of coherence are like, no.
I may only know one thing, and that is who my vice president is.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to get to all of that right after this.
Folks, let me tell you about my friends at Americans for Prosperity, America's largest grassroots organization. Americans for Prosperity is out there every day fighting for you. Their goal, reignite the American dream. AFP's priorities are simple: secure the border, end inflation, make energy more affordable. And AFP gets results the old-fashioned way, through grassroots activism. They bring together like-minded conservatives, turning them into a grassroots army, and defeating the left's terrible big government agenda in the states and in Washington. And that's where you come in. With the media, celebrities, and universities stacked against us, it's the grassroots that will help us win. So please find an Americans for Prosperity chapter in your state and get in the fight. Go to americansforprosperity.org.
All right, so where we left you was this whole notion that Kamala Harris is doing everything in her power. Her campaign is doing everything in her power to try to shed the incumbent label because, people think it's going pretty shitty here in the United States. Mm-hmm. And we don't like the way that she's handling the border. We don't like the way she's handling the economy. And so they're basically trying to pretend that she's an innocent bystander in all of this. Some crazy old guy is responsible for all of it. She's just sort of had a 50-yard line seat for better. You can't do anything more about it. Well, Joe's got other ideas about all of that. Can we play clip 3, please, Spaghetti?
There have obviously been a number of crises that the country has been facing over the past several days with the hurricane, with the port strike, with the situation in the Middle East. Can you talk about how your vice president, who is running for the presidency, has worked on these crises and what role she has played over the past several days?
Well, I'm in constant contact with her. She's aware we're singing from the same song sheet. She helped pass all the laws that are being employed now. She was a major player in everything we've done, including passage of legislation which we were told we could never pass. And so she's been, and her staff is interlocked with mine in terms of all the things we're doing.
Let me just say, even the most gifted rhetorical foray by J.D. Vance or Donald Trump or anybody else could not lock her in a box tighter than that.
You know what's funny about it is, like, if a reporter shouts a question at him, like on the tarmac, or like he gets asked something he doesn't know the answer, it's like, huh? We done all we can for the storm. Or like, Israel's got to figure it out. And the question is like, tell us about Kamala Harris. Well, suddenly I'm very articulate.
Exactly, dude. It was the same thing. I thought it's the most coherent thing he said in months.
He hit all the talking points. He said, I'm in constant contact with her, right?
Our staffs are interlocked.
She played a major role in all of the legislation that we passed, He's like it's working. I mean, it's not working. It's like he laid all of the blame at her feet. And what I hear in all of that is a man who was dragged out kicking and screaming, did not want to be taken off the ticket, and he's got a massive chip on his shoulder about that. Yep. And so what he doesn't like is the idea that she gets to run away from what he sees as the accomplishments of his administration. It's got to be about him.
Totally.
Yeah,
100%.
well, and he knows that she did do all of those things.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, it's gotten so bad that CNN has taken notice of it, and they write, top aides to Kamala Harris are heading into the final month of the 2024 presidential race, still wrestling with how much distance that she can credibly claim from Joe Biden as she looks for more ways to weave in breaks with him on the campaign trail. But she keeps getting pulled back to his side for official business at the White House, and he keeps injecting himself into the conversation.
Yeah. Can you imagine the president of the United States injecting himself into the conversation?
It's like there's, sometimes you have that older relative that really embarrasses you in front of the waiter, at dinner,
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the situation.
Yeah.
And like Papa won't shut up. He just won't shut up.
You're like, please, no.
Please,
no. To me, this felt like, if it's some like courtroom for some mobsters and one of them has flipped and he's like, right there, jury, she did it with me.
Yeah, dude.
All the legislation that all the American people hate, she was instrumental in helping all that happen.
Yeah, can you point out the person in the room who's
and her
in
staff's
charge
like,
of all
oh
this?
no, why?
Wobbly finger.
Yeah.
Right at her.
It was her. It was her, officer.
So interesting, a couple of caveats to this thing. Running as an extension of the president is not a strong position, Harris aides know, while asserting what she stands for is.
Oh.
Listen to that convoluted deal. So, like, it got me thinking, because I read this article and I was like, that sentence in particular just popped out to me. Not popular to run with Joe Biden because he's unpopular and what he's done is unpopular. But what she stands for is, first of all, nobody in the fucking world knows what it is that she stands for, much less hers. Like, she can't explain it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, the fact that they've come up with this construct enough to talk to CNN about is the wild world that they live in. And I was thinking about it. I was like, look, if you took everything you knew away from this election, Donald Trump, everything he's been for the last 8 years, Joe Biden, everything he's been for 50 years, and you just looked at the two campaigns, and one campaign, when you ask them, like, what are your thoughts on the economy, they give you a childhood story about growing up under lights with bicycles.
I'm happy to serve.
You ask them about the border, and they're like, yes, I'm very strong on the border, except they had to do something about it for 4 years, and they can't explain what it is that they did. You ask them about crime, and they give you a long, convoluted thing about second chances and all of these other things. You ask them about virtually anything, that is in the top 7 or 8 issues facing the American people that they say they care about.
Yeah.
They can't give an answer. And then you've got on the other side a presidential campaign of Donald Trump. Whatever you think of him, whatever you think of J.D. Vance, whatever you think about the Republican Party in general, they'll give you quite specific answers on all of these things. So like if you remove yourself just from like the construct that everyone has built of what this race is, you're not in a tremendously strong position when you can't answer a single question, or you have to give a deflecting answer to just a core, what are your views on the economy?
I mean, that's always been the central problem they face, is that everything this administration has done is incredibly unpopular with the American people. The approval rating for Joe Biden was in the tank because of what he'd done. And right there, like for a second, I was like, did Chris LaCivita run up to the podium and put his talkers down? He's like, Kamala Harris was instrumental in all of Joe Biden's policies. It's like, wow, Joe Biden is making it clear to the American people what Kamala Harris is trying to hide. She's been the incumbent.
He did everything for Republicans except call her border czar.
Yeah. He's like, also, great job, border czar, Kamala. A+.
So the kicker in this is exactly what you were talking about. Even into recent days, people who have spoken with close Biden advisors told CNN they've heard complaints that the president would be in the same spot or better right now had he stayed in the race.
Yes. So I've said this.
That's beautiful.
I've said this before.
That's it right there.
I've said this before, and it'll be the funniest thing. Like, obviously, it will be awesome if Donald Trump and J.D. Vance win, but honestly, the funniest thing will be Joe Biden and his surrogates out there in the media afterwards saying he would have won.
He would have won.
He would have won.
He did it before.
And you know what the icing on the cake of that is there is this fracture between like Obama world, which calls the shots. Like Nancy Pelosi's part and parcel with that, and that's how they stabbed Joe in the back and got him out. But to have Joe Biden's camp out there afterwards being like, we'd have won. He got pushed out. This is what happened. We knew this would happen. We knew Joe could have won. Kamala blew it. It will cause this fracture in the Democrat Party, which will be so wonderful to see.
With this like underlying misogyny involved
totally.
too, which would just be just delicious to watch.
Oh, it's gonna be
coming out of a Democrat. Oh, it will be amazing. So look, it leads us to our question of the day. And you remember, you got to like and subscribe this YouTube in order to get your comments processed, but we read every single one of them, including, by the way, the thousands that were on the J.D. Vance trip thing that we did last week. We read every single one. We like to process it and use it as a part of what it is that we do here. So our question is, why did Kamala finally come out of the basement? Why is she doing all of those interviews? Is it perhaps that her poll numbers are not looking so good, that they feel like they need to reach a different audience? Have they topped out? Interested because you guys know, and you know the people you hang out with and the people who like maybe don't have fully formed opinions on how they're going to vote at this point. Do they listen to stuff like Cheating 101? Maybe. I don't know. But I'd be interested in what you all think about that. So remember, like and subscribe. Give us your comments. We will read them all on Thursday's episode. And when we come back, we're going to read some of your comments from last week's episode. But we'll get to that right after this. Boys, Lumen.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had great things to say about this. We appreciate them being a sponsor, but I appreciate them putting out a product that actually does what it's supposed to. It's essentially, it's a cheat code. There it is right there on the camera. Lumen, how it works is you pop the cap off the thing in the morning, you just breathe into it, and what it does is it tells you, okay, since you've been sleeping, your body's been burning carbohydrates or your body's been burning fat. And then here's what that means. Here's what you should eat. Here's what you should do for the rest of the day. It decides for you. So it's not like, folks who like to try to be health conscious, might have your Apple Watch tell you what you're doing. You might have a Whoop band, which is like, oh, your HRV is this day. And it's like, what does HRV even mean? Just like, tell me what to do. Mm-hmm. And that's what Lumen does.
What I like about the idea is that I don't have to be in with a nutritionist.
Yeah, you don't have to meet with a dietitian to figure it out. It gives you what you have to do. And if you're busy and you don't have time for like a meal prep kit or plan kit or whatever, or you can't track all this stuff yourself. I mean, who can if you're busy?
Who can?
And if you're traveling and things like that, it makes it super, super convenient, just a cheat sheet for like, what should I have today?
But you can rely on the data because it was actually developed. The whole thing was developed by scientists, PhDs, right, Smug?
Yeah, that's the thing is, so I actually did take the time. I hired a dietitian. It was pretty expensive. And the information that he's been giving me mirrors Lumen's recommendations like perfectly, which is to me the most impressive part is you're getting top-notch information.
Because it's a math problem. Like, that's what people don't realize is like it's calories in, calories out, you know? And so like this gives you the equation for what you're supposed to do every single day.
Take it from our resident hypochondriac, comfortably smug, that this is exactly the way that you should operate in your health. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, you go to lumen.me/ruthless, get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/ruthless for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. So we want to get to these comments that you left last Thursday. And at that point, we had good vantage point to see into the debate. We didn't know exactly how many people had viewed it. Turns out there's like 60 million people that watch this thing, which is just like reserved for Super Bowls in this day and age. You know, like not everybody gathers around the TV for MASH in today's day and age. Like it's only Super Bowls, and it turns out vice presidential debates. So a huge number of people watching. Our question was, will the debate move the needle? So we asked you, and this is your response. We always start with a voice.
Okay, our first comment comes from Martha Zoller, who's a very good friend of the program. And Martha writes, on your question, I do think this debate's going to move the needle because it's the first time they were actually talking to swing voters instead of just to their base. It was also a really good discussion, and I have talked to a lot of women who, from all perspectives, who over the last few days, no one really liked JD more than they thought, and they like Trump better now, too.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting deal because I agree. There was something about the tone of the debate in and of itself, the fact that they weren't, overtly confrontational when they didn't need to be. I mean, clearly JD pushed back hard on all the things that he needed to, but there was a tone there that middle, center right, center left voters reside in. Like that's where they live. And so clearly by the number of people that tuned in, people were kind of picking up on that. I think Martha's probably right about that. Dunks, what else we got?
This is from Andy M. Andy writes, I think if any VP debate has a chance to move the needle, this was the one. Vance delivered the Trump message with a concise, polite, and reassuring tone. Just what those Nikki Haley voters and independents were waiting to hear. Let's fucking go.
Yeah. Good, nice comment.
The one thing I would say there is, and I mean, Martha mentioned this too, but like it was a very conversational tone, and JD thrived in that environment. Yeah. Like Tim Walz looked exasperated, you know, like he was like, his eyes were bugging out. And JD was just totally in command, and I think it put people at ease because everything that they thought they knew about JD up to that point was such a caricature of who the man is.
Yeah.
You know, if you saw something on Twitter or the way that mainstream media was describing this guy, you would think he was crazy. But like JD, I mean, he's like your buddy, as we learned in our interview.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Very well done. Smug, what else do we have?
This comment comes from Pete Hansen. Pete writes, not sure if the VP debate will sway national polls, but most importantly, it was the audience in PA, largely based on constituents who may be wondering who the guy is that Kamala picked over their popular governor. and will seeing this buffoon turn them off Kamala, as well as how well JD pivoted almost every answer to energy production. That's a good point.
I think it's a great point. And we were talking about all of the Democrats blaming Kamala for losing the election if she does lose and saying that Biden should have been on the ticket. I think they're also going to blame the choice of Tim Walz and not taking the Pennsylvania governor, Shapiro.
I totally agree. By the way, did you guys see the first funny thing I've seen out of SNL, which the whole episode actually, I never watch Saturday Night Live anymore. I haven't for years, but I saw a bunch of clips that were hilarious, legitimately, and so I went back and kind of watched it. But the Jim Gaffigan...
Very funny.
Portrayal of Walz is like every bit as good as the old like Palin thing with what's her name. I mean, it is hilarious. Him doing the Tiananmen Square routine.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I think the problem was that I was at Epcot. I mean, it was so good. But I think that to your point, like people are looking at him as a total buffoon after that.
That's and him like trying to go back to that question when she was like, wait a minute, so you didn't answer the question, were you in China? Like, what's going on? And he's like, well, I'm a knucklehead. Like really reinforcing the idea that he's an idiot, which in his mind, I guess the campaigns is that like, it makes him more like likable and relatable. And it's like, actually, I think the American people have had their fill of an idiot in the White House.
Well, here's my problem. I'm dumb as shit, and I'm going to be a heartbeat from the presidency.
That's not reassuring at all. And
remember to early vote.
I really feel there's been kind of like this momentum shift of how bad his performance was, just really reinforcing this idea that, Kamala Harris and Waltz are a team of buffoons. Like they said it themselves, and we've all seen it for years now of Kamala. And like I took a look at Polymarket numbers this morning. It is spreading. Like Trump is up like 6-7% in Polymarket. Like I feel like the vibe has shifted that this campaign that Kamala Harris has run is getting exposed. It's a bunch of idiots, and the American people need competency.
Well, and like we said, the Trump campaign had a very good week last week, and it culminated in an incredibly important return to Butler, Pennsylvania, which was the home of the first assassination attempt, just an absolutely dreadful scenario, which has been played out live on television over the last 3 months. And his return there symbolically is an incredible picture just in and of itself, regardless of the energy at the rally. But there was hundreds of thousands of people that showed up at this thing. It was wild. This is how Trump began this. If we can play clip 4, please, Spaghettis.
Lee, thank you very much, really. And thank you, a very big thank you to Pennsylvania. We love Pennsylvania. And as I was saying...
Just iconic.
There's the chart. God, that's so strong.
Incredible start. An incredible start. Of course, that was the moment with that chart up that shots ripped out that ultimately hit his ear and killed Compatore in the process, and had just an incredible amount of devastation in that moment in time. And the fact that he's able to sort of collect himself and go back and get kind of twice the energy there.
Dude, only Donald Trump could get a round of applause for putting up a chart at a political rally. like just for a sec, like, I mean, he's such a singular force in politics. Nobody else could do that. And he does it with the style of a showman who clearly has been on national television for decades and knows how to work a crowd. It's just an incredible moment of triumph.
Couldn't have been a more beautiful evening either. I mean, the setting was absolutely perfect. And one of the guests that he had, as somebody that most people have heard of, is Elon Musk. Can we play clip 5, please, Spaghetti?
And free speech is the bedrock of democracy. And if people don't know what's going on, if they don't know the truth, how can you make an informed vote? You must have free speech in order to have democracy. That's why it's the First Amendment. And the Second Amendment is there to ensure that we have the First Amendment.
Hell yeah.
I mean, it's just an awesome message. And look, this guy, like anybody who speaks out anything other than liberal dogma on a national perspective, is immediately caricatured, and his motives are caricatured. Is there anybody that can disagree with that?
No. No, I mean, and it sets Republicans up as the actual defenders of democracy. And Democrats have painted themselves as that for the entire cycle. And we all know it's a lie, but now it's on full display. If you look back over the last week, John Kerry became famous for what he said at some, like, I don't really know what he was at, but he was talking about eliminating the First Amendment of the Constitution so that they can stop whatever they define as misinformation or disinformation.
He says straight up, he's like, well, you see, the problem is the First Amendment gets in the way of stopping this misinformation. It's like, the First Amendment never gets in the way.
Yeah. All right. Turns out it's the first of all of the amendments, and it's sort of important to
Turns
us.
out it is the way. A couple of the things that I think Elon did really well there on stage. Number one, I think he put in perspective that what that assassination attempt meant. He mentioned during his speech, courage under fire. You learn a lot about a person and what they do in those moments of stress. And the other thing he did, which I'm really glad he did, and I think it's going to be an ultimate decider in who wins this election in November, is he emphasized early vote and absentee by mail.
Yep.
And getting people to vote and bank their vote early so that the Trump campaign can be more efficient with its resources in its last week. And
something that JD reinforced in our interview.
Reinforced during our interview too. And I'm just so glad folks are doing that, because it's a culture shift, and it's one that we have desperately needed in the Republican Party. We used to win elections on the strength of our absentee by mail and early voting. We got away from it, 2020 and the pandemic and all of that sort of stuff. And I think a shift back in that direction is going to be huge in November.
Totally agree. Associated Press reported a couple of other quotes from the rally. 12 weeks ago, we all took a bullet for America, Trump said. All we are asking is that everyone goes out and vote. We got to win. We can't let this happen to our country.
I mean, it's so powerful.
It's just exactly the right thing. He said, we've fought together, we've endured together, we've pushed onward together, and right here in Pennsylvania, we've bled together. We've bled. And that is
so strong.
So strong. Also, the symbolic value of everything that now every single person in America has seen in some form or fashion. The imagery associated with the message capped off what I think is other than the destruction of Joe Biden in that debate in June, followed by a bunch of court cases falling apart. If you set that period of time aside, this is the strongest week that this campaign has had, in my view. And that capstone was just hard to miss. And it comes, look, fellas, first week in October is a pretty good time for that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, it really is. And also, I think it shows you there are a few things that I think go back to why they're putting Kamala out there to speak for herself, because the highest profile surrogates of Democrats are defining her campaign. You have Joe Biden saying, yeah, she's with me. You have Tim Walz blowing it in the debate. You have John Kerry saying he's going to eliminate the First Amendment. And then you have lunatic shooters out there who are taking shots at President Trump's life, and they're defining what Democrats are in this cycle. And I think
that's a good point.
I think that is one reason why they're pushing Kamala out, because they're like, man, we need to get our candidate.
Yeah, they have to
camera.
get back control of the message. They've totally lost control of the message because they've been trying to play this prevent defense, and maybe at a time in which people hadn't formulated an opinion of her, and they thought they could she could be this ink blot test where people could be like, well, I think she's going to do the things I want. I mean, I don't really like Trump or whatever. But then you got into the specifics.
Yeah.
And she and when she couldn't answer for the specifics, they tried to fill in with all these other people. And that didn't get the job done.
Didn't get the job done.
That is such a good way of putting it, because it was like an ink blot, and they're like, you see joy.
Yeah.
You see joy. Tell me you see joy.
Right.
And they're like, I don't know, man. Groceries are more expensive, and it looks like the border's wide open. Joy, say it.
Yeah.
And it has not worked, and it's getting worse and worse for them.
It all in like a full DNC convention of being like, we just found this great candidate. She just showed up yesterday, and she's got no tie to the past. And then all of a sudden, like, people are like, hold on, like the sitting president says she's like lockstep with. That doesn't feel right. And so like, shit, we got to get her out there. We got to talk about stuff.
And then to like really make a comparison, could I get graphic 1 up there on the screen? I mean, look at that. That's what they're up against now. You've got Elon, Trump, and JD. Like, this is a team that is rolling right now. Mm-hmm. They are rolling.
Yeah. I mean, look, it feels good. Now, every day is a lifetime in politics, and people are voting in places all over the place. Early voting, mail ballots are out in a bunch of different places. You're going to have to vote.
Yep.
I mean, if you haven't made a plan yet, like, stop what you're doing and make a plan, because you either got to go mail in your ballot, do it today if it's available to you, or you have to figure out an early voting location hour, go do that. If you're going to vote on election day, that's fine. Just make sure that there is no chance that a snowstorm, a hurricane, or anything else can stop you from getting to those polls, because we've seen that too often, that when you vote, there's something that can impede you. And I think the message resonating out of Butler and what we did with JD is just vote.
I mean, we've always seen the images from Election Day where it's like, oh, I mean, gosh, in New York, I used to remember this every time. ballot machines are down, guys. Line out the door. You're going to have to wait 3 hours. Don't let it happen to you. Get your ballot. Cast that vote as soon as possible. Bank that. And like Duncan says, now the Trump campaign knows, okay, this person we can see on the Secretary of State's database, this person has already voted. We can send our door knocker somewhere else. You won't get the phone calls anymore either.
Right.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, you can save resources for the campaign in the process. Very, very smart to do. Are you guys ready for some variety?
Yes.
Always.
So, as you all very well know, our weekends are captivated somewhat between kids' activities and all these other things with football. I'd like it to be known, stated here.
You'd like it to be known.
Variety program that there is one undefeated team in the NFC. The Chiefs are in the AFC, but the Vikings. A 5-0
I love
start.
how he says I'd like it to be known, like he's not the one guiding the show to this topic. like this information is somehow being suppressed.
Well, I think it's useful and something worth
look
talking
at this. It turns out the Vikings are undefeated.
Yeah.
Wow, how did that get in the show sheet?
I'm looking at the show sheet here, and it says, "Oh wow, 5-0. That's incredible."
It's interesting how much he pushes Tim Walz's football team.
Yeah.
So weird.
Yeah.
What a
what a rhino.
That's just unbelievable.
No,
Let
I
me
mean,
start
look.
digging up.
I hat off to you there, the Vikings, and not only was it a great football game and a great victory, it was in London.
Yes.
And one type of imperialism I love is sports imperialism.
It is very good. I know exactly.
You know,
it's
Call it football.
Yeah,
this is football.
Yeah, it's like the closest thing to like dumping tea in a harbor that gets me excited about the British. And that was fantastic. It was just a great weekend of ball.
It really was a great weekend in ball. The Ruthless Parlay didn't
didn't
exactly hit this week, but there's several weeks to come where we can.
But you know what? I'm glad that my friends' teams are doing well.
Oh, that's nice.
I want something to root for because the Cincinnati Bengals.
Here we go.
Their offense has scored just as many touchdowns as the Minnesota Vikings offense. We have a top 5 offense in the NFL, but the problem is we have a bottom 5 defense, and it turns out defense matters.
You need that in the National Football League.
You do need a defense.
It's important.
Hopefully we can pull things together and have a winning season, but you never know. I'll be rooting for my friends' teams too.
So bad. It's already calling it quits.
I just need everyone who's listening or watching this to know it is so funny to be on a group chat with John Ashbrook while the Bengals are on.
Oh, God.
Because he doesn't enjoy a single second of it.
No, it's pure pain and anxiety.
He's like up 10 against the Ravens, like the powerhouse in the division. Nope, not enjoying it. Not one single second.
Well, they're going to give it up next.
I hate when they're winning.
Well,
I hate when they're losing. Like the highs are low and the lows are lower.
You didn't live through the 90s as a Bengals fan.
Sure.
We have certain things that we expect. Sure.
I think Bungles was their official name.
It was terrible. It was terrible. But we've got a great offense, and hopefully they can.
You had a
pull
bad
things
team.
together.
I think the receiver's leaving, so good things aren't ahead.
So that's not all of football. We're big college fans too, and it turns out there was an incredible upset over the weekend. Vanderbilt beat the number 1 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide, which nobody saw coming. Vanderbilt is not a particularly steeped or well-esteemed football program, although they are in the SEC and they filled a decent team. Nobody thought that this was possible. Least amongst anybody were the fans at Vanderbilt, which if we can play clip 6, please, Spaghetti, you'll get a little idea. So what you're seeing there down on the street are the goalposts from the stadium.
Yeah.
That First Bank Stadium, they carried more than 3 miles to the Cumberland River, according to the New York Post, where they tossed it into the water, as seen in videos on social media. So Vanderbilt fans, look, they're pretty unaccustomed to this kind of celebration when it comes to football, but they kind of did a great job.
They're so unaccustomed to it that Alabama fans outnumbered Vanderbilt fans in Vanderbilt Stadium. You know, like a bad call for Alabama and like chorus of boos. You know, like. And plus, I mean, that stadium, God bless you, the people who showed up. I mean, like, it feels like it's been under construction for 2 decades. Like, in the end zones, it's just like cement, you know? Like, they can't figure it out there.
Well, I love seeing all the comments because this is in Nashville. for folks who don't know where Vanderbilt plays, you probably have no reason to, but it's in Nashville, and all these people are like, there's a bunch of like bachelorette parties, extremely confused of what the hell is going on.
Somebody's marching
Yeah,
metal
there's
steel
a big
barriers.
goalpost being marched down the street with cop cars.
Well, congratulations to all the good people of Vanderbilt, because that was a good celebration. I think in this next story, you remember like, was it last week or the week before, where I've sort of caricatured Spaghetti's interest in the variety as you know, sort of, I wouldn't say lowbrow because I enjoy it, but it was sexual in nature because we had 2 or 3 in a row.
He's hot-blooded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think he took some exception to that, so he tried to go extremely highbrow.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't wait for that.
I like this pick, though. This is a good one.
I mean, it's pretty good. So the story is, according to The Guardian, Van Gogh is turning in his grave at the harsh Just Stop Oil sentence. I know because I spoke to him. Now,
okay,
let me set the backdrop. Van Gogh, obvious famous artist, but portraits and works of art in all kinds of different museums. Protesters, like extreme psycho environmentalists, have taken to throwing paint and what have you on any sort of like irreplaceable work of art, including Van Gogh's, and to try to get attention to their cause. This particular individual claims that it's justified, and Van Gogh himself approves. Let me just read a couple of passages. Nature was the painter's ultimate muse, and he would have admired those seeking to protect it. This is, just so you know, it's somebody named Nadia Tolokonokova. There's just a lot of K's in there. I don't know what to tell you. I think Tolokonokova, that sounds close enough, doesn't it?
I'm going to accept it.
Well,
it's all vowels and K's.
She's a creator of a feminist art collective. So she says, I woke up to a call from Vincent Van Gogh today. Now, this
is like a bit that she's doing.
Well,
no, this person is clinically insane and believes that Van Gogh spoke to her.
Oh.
Here's my quick observation that I know that the old man will
They can't really
appreciate.
be this crazy. No, they actually are.
This is what the old man will appreciate. Didn't Van Gogh cut off his ear?
He cut off his ear at one point and he committed suicide.
Yeah, so
makes it difficult to talk on the phone, is your point.
Maybe in the afterlife, his ear has been restored.
Oh, okay. Like maybe she has the ear and she's like whispering in it, and then
the ear.
Then she holds that ear up to her ear.
Is the ear preserved?
It's
in
like
formaldehyde.
It's like a seashell. You know, like you can hear the ocean. You know, she can hear Van Gogh.
Well, he told me that he wants to just stop oil protesters who threw the soup on his sunflowers to be released immediately. I nodded and promised to do everything I could to ensure Phoebe and Anna would be freed soon.
And so, just for a quick second. So, like Holmes was describing, these are the protesters. They go to these museums when everyone's got their families and whatnot there. Have probably traveled a fair bit to be like, okay, kid, there's the Van Gogh, you know. And then some idiot runs up with a can of soup, throws it all over the painting. Yes. And the kid's like, what just happened? So one of these lunatics just got sentenced. And so you saw these other people being like, oh, you know, this particular moron's like, Van Gogh spoke to me. And anytime I've seen, so when they got sentenced, the Just Stop Oil people did it again to this same painting. Yeah. Right? And I saw the video of this and I was like, if I'm in a museum and this happens, this is like free assault. You get to beat the shit out of this person. Sure. It's a lot of fun. You know, they're a horrible person. You feel good about yourself. That's, to me, what shocks me the most when I see this is like, because in the video I see, you know, there's like families and stuff, and they're just like shocked this is happening. Someone run up and just start throwing punches, you know? Like, this is the most insane.
In the name of art.
In the name of art.
Yeah. And they're not
probably
claiming
not going to
like,
find a lot of takers in the...
Yeah.
They're like, the ghost of Van Gogh spoke to me. This is who we're supposed to listen to, that like, if you don't stop using plastic straws, the world's going to blow up in 5 years. Like, this is insane. How do these people ever, are they allowed a voice in the public discourse?
What you don't know, Smug, is will one more can of soup stop all the hurricanes? Because it might. It might. It really might.
It might. The good people of North Carolina would be well advised to listen to this woman and her speaking to Van Gogh, apparently through some kind of a seance or something or other. But you recall when it was a little controversial when we said it first, but we were talking about the pro-Hamas how pro-Hamas is basically a constituency of the Democratic Party. The soup throwers and the people who claim to talk to dead people, that's how you get an administration that shuts down the XL pipeline.
That's right.
That is very much a constituency of the Democratic Party. To the point where, I mean, you may be asking yourself, how is it that you struggle with oil and energy independence? You don't want to outsource a lot of influence to the world because you'd like to keep that to yourself because it's a national security issue and everything else. Well, if you can just sort of proactively turn it over to China and turn off sort of domestic resources or continental resources entirely, it's because of this.
Dude, I'm so glad you said that because it is super, super true. Is like the sort of just stupid destruction of this art does mirror their overall policy objectives, which is like the suicide of America's energy policy. It's the same thing. It's just as pointless and stupid.
They've gotten a great label. People are calling them decels. Decelerate, where America give up your energy dominance, which allowed us to have such a strong position in gold. America, give up, like they're saying, cut back on how much you eat. Stop growing so much food. You know, like they really just want everyone go back to the dark ages.
And all of these people hate the human race.
They really do.
And they all have personality disorders. Clearly.
I mean, just unbelievably. But it's like issue after issue. I kind of don't care which one.
Yeah.
Like there's a severe mental health problem happening here. It's like, I don't know. Apparently she was a part of Pussy Riot. I didn't think I'd be able to say that here on the Ruthless Variety program, but they were the political prisoners. Didn't knock any sense into her in prison, I'll tell you that much, because this is as crazy as it gets.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the end of the day, it's like these are the severely mentally ill people who have a voice in the Democrat Party trying to raise the cost of your gas, trying to force America to spend all our money on Chinese solar panels. These are the nut jobs who this administration would listen to.
They're it. Because, you know, when you see Kamala Harris saying, like, oh, small business is my passion, like, that's just for you to try to be fooled about it.
Yeah.
Small business was definitely not this lady's passion when she oversaw, again, the XL pipeline coming down, right? It wasn't when she wanted to raise taxes on small businesses. Certainly wasn't when you created things like electric car mandates.
Have we ever figured out where exactly that McDonald's she claims to have worked at was?
No,
and she's not saying.
They're not saying.
They're not going to ask.
Like
her
maybe
either.
just
They're
an
not gonna
intersection. Maybe just give you an intersection.
Yeah.
I mean, because like, sorry, I know I'm sort of hijacking this, but like, your first job in the food service industry, you remember it. I mean, it's a traumatic experience. it really is. Once you work on the other side of that. Like it is.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to tell me. I was at Foot Locker. I mean, you haven't lived until you try to put a 300-pound woman in running shoes.
Yeah, no, it is like you learn a ton, and I highly advise young people out there or parents, like, get your kids to get those jobs in retail and food service, because you learn a lot about other people and like how to be presentable and all these sorts of things. But like, I remember every single thing about my first job in the restaurant industry.
And to your point, remember Obama worked at Baskin-Robbins, and they interviewed his manager. They had pictures of the Baskin-Robbins where he worked. They had a whole storyline developed about it, and nothing.
It's like, I don't know, it's one of the 8 million locations.
Yeah.
You can
just a McDonald's.
You can figure it out. Figure it out if you want. I don't know. Talk to somebody. Somebody knows. They won't provide any granularity to it. It's so funny. Could be true, could not be true. I don't know. All I know is it's suspicious.
Yeah.
When somebody doesn't remember their first job. I can tell you at Ridgedale Mall, the Foot Locker, I remember every second of that.
Yeah. The Trattoria Regione at 136 in Meridian. They tried to stiff me my last paycheck.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah. And I went off to college. My dad went into that bar.
Oh, that's Dale.
And he goes to the owner and demanded my paycheck.
Oh, nice.
Because he wanted to teach me a lesson,
This is...
You follow through.
You stand up for yourself.
Yeah, right.
Dale Duncan, what an absolute prince of a human being.
I mean, that restaurant went out of business like a few months later.
Well, they didn't treat their people well.
That's right.
That's what happens to that kind of
thing. It was a trattoria, so these are Italians, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah.
Spaghetti.
I'm surprised it wasn't like cash under the envelope.
You know?
And also, you're going to go over here.
Now that you
You're
mentioned
going
it,
to go say hi
Smug-
to Mickey at the construction site. He'll give you your money.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, first night of the opening, all the linens were the wrong size for the tables.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels right. All right, so we're going to get some important stuff out of an interview that you gentlemen conducted earlier today with Jessica Anderson from the Sentinel Action Fund. They're doing some really important work. We've heard from her before here on the Ruthless Variety program about what her organization is up to in the attempt to try to win this election for the good guys. Can we go to it?
Yeah, let's go to it. I want to welcome to the program a great friend of the program. You've heard from her on the program before, Jessica Anderson, Sentinel Action Fund. How are you?
Hi, good to be here.
We're very glad to have you on right now. You know, we're less than 30 days from the election, and you're doing a lot of the hard work out there in the field to get people to early vote. And so I'm hoping you've brought us some good news.
There is good news. Flash boilerplate alert. These races are tight.
Yeah.
Nothing is won.
Mm-hmm.
We're less than 30 days from Election Day. Pennsylvania is just as close as we all thought it was going to be. It's going to be a nail biter. Montana, I think, will break towards Republicans probably first. It's most promising. Early vote is already underway in the state. Tim Sheehy, the Senate candidate there, is running a great race. Trump obviously will perform exceptionally well. So I think Montana is +1 in our court. Just don't take anything for granted, right? We still know that Tester's a strong Democratic candidate. There's a lot of time left for him to upset the apple cart. Ohio is getting closer every single day. I feel cautiously optimistic that Bernie Moreno is going to pull out a W. Early voting actually in Ohio starts today. He's on the ground. A bunch of senators are in the state. The response from the grassroots and our ground game verbatims, literally, they get better every single day of people getting excited about Bernie, his message. They know he's the Trump-backed candidate. So Ohio's shifting in our direction for the Senate side. It was always looked good for Trump.
Yeah.
But, a couple of weeks ago, there was a gap between where the president was and where the Senate was. And that's almost all but narrowed, and it is a strong position. And then Pennsylvania, I think all eyes are going to be on the Keystone State yet again.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a race that is going to come down to the absentee ballot and early vote turnout. We will win. Republicans will win Election Day. No doubt. We won it last time. The proof here of our strategy and of McCormick's success is going to be on this absentee ballot early vote turnout.
You guys are doing a lot on the ground game side, and I know you've got a ton of data. I know you've got a ton of local examples, but I wonder if you could give us a sense of exactly what you guys are doing out there, hitting the doors and everything else.
So our goal has been to turn out these low propensity voters, and these are voters that have only voted maybe one or two of the last 4 elections. So these voters are not engaged. They're probably not listening to us today, sadly. They're not on X. They don't watch their television ads, like they're rabbit ears or they've cut the cords, right? They're not plugged in at all. And the only way we can actually engage with them is if we show up at their door. And if the people that are at their door are part of their community, they look like them, they talk like them, their kids may go to school, they may have a business together, they're at the soccer field together on the weekends, whatever that community connection is, we wanted to provide that and have a little bit more synergy on the ground for these low propensity voters. So in Pennsylvania, there's actually 1.2 million registered Republicans. So they're already registered. They've done that hard work of registering low propensity voters. And we've been working since the late spring to turn them out through mail, through digital, through text, but then through this door-to-door operation, which is going directly to their door and talking to them about issues, cost of living, fracking, gas, oil, immigration, safety and security. I mean, the whole host of issues, and then walking them through how they can either vote by mail or how they can vote early based on their county. And what's been interesting to me is that most of these voters are in the suburbs or the metro area of Philly and Pittsburgh. They're not like downtown city people. They're really in the suburbs, and they need some hand-holding. They need, where they're supposed to request their ballot, how long does it take to come to them, how do we fill it out? I mean, we're really answering very technical questions, and those things take time, and it takes time to build up trust at the door. And so we actually estimate that we need at least 30 individual touches for these low propensity voters between mail, text, digital, and the door knock, live calls to actually turn them out.
Well, and it can also be confusing for people, particularly low propensity voters who don't do it a lot, because, I mean, I just know from my own experience, if I vote on election day, it's this elementary school.
That's right.
Down the street. If I want to vote early in person, I got to go to the courthouse.
That's right.
In the county. Totally different locations.
Yep.
So part of voting, especially voting a lot, is like the muscle memory of what you're used to doing.
Yes.
And so you're not only trying to turn out low propensity voters, you're trying to build in this in their head of like, okay, these are the steps I need to take to make sure I go and bank my vote.
Yeah, and also remember, everything is different from the last time they voted in 2022 and 2020 when it was COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So actually in all of the Senate battleground states, the laws that govern how voters vote have changed since the last time they voted. I mean, in 2020 in Montana, for instance, everyone was getting a mail-in ballot automatically.
Right.
You didn't even have to request it, whereas this year you had to go in and request it. So the habitualness of voting is completely topsy-turvy in today's environment. And so I think of the program kind of in two buckets: educating voters on how to vote and where to vote. And then you talk to them about who to vote for and why to vote. And you kind of got to do it in phases, which is why we started so early and have been on the ground since the spring, especially in a tough state like Pennsylvania, where it's going to come down to the turnout margins of these low propensity voters and for them ticking the ticket all the way top to bottom. President Trump all the way down to their House races.
Yeah. So the Trump campaign is very well organized this time around, led by Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita. We've talked about that extensively on the program, and they've had a lot of experience through a difficult primary. They turned people out in Iowa in the primary. They turned people out in New Hampshire in the primary, and they won hotly contested races. They have a lot of experience on the ground, and they're going to carry that into Election Day. So I wonder if you could talk about how you're just amplifying that work that they're doing.
The best thing that conservatives and Republican operatives have for us going forward right now is the cohesion and the synergy between the official Trump campaign and its apparatus, the super PACs, where we can legally coordinate post this FEC report that came out in the summer, which allows us to coordinate on the data around doors. So we can actually directly work with the McCormick campaign, for instance, on our door knocking presence in the state. That FEC opinion just opened the doors for more data exchanges, and it allows a certain level of specificity when we're moving. So we're not double knocking a door. And so you've got a professionalism that is now brought to the ground game that is really new and innovative. And it's also changed nicely over the summer because you actually saw the Trump campaign and the RNC recognize that you have to do both. You have to have the official campaign working legally in its box, the RNC and the committees working legally in their box, and then outside groups that fill in the operational gaps. So I can go into the low propensity universe in Pennsylvania, and I know there's no duplication. And I know that the other super PACs that are on the ground with us, the Keystone Renewal, the McCormick super PAC, RSLC, Elon's new team, that we're all sharing data as legally permissible. So we're decreasing that duplication. And look, this is not sexy stuff. These are operational nuts and bolts. We get in the data weeds. I mean, we're looking at numbers now daily because we're getting the returns from the state. But this is how elections are won and lost on the ground. It's about the door knocks and the actual conversion and trust that you have with voters that can't be replicated with a television ad.
And for our listeners, if you're getting door knocks or a text or
answer
a
the door,
call,
please.
Answer the door. And you know what? If you go ahead and you bank your vote, then they don't have to
That's
go
right.
back and knock on your door again.
When you vote early or you send in your absentee mailer, you immediately drop off of our list. So if we're bothering you or if someone else is bugging you, the best way to tell us nicely to, bug off is vote.
Vote.
That's exactly right. And it's funny that you even say it because a lot of times people will say, well, I can just ignore that text and I can just, put my television on mute and ignore that email. Well, it's really hard to ignore people at the door.
Right.
And so, sometimes it's like, okay, what do I need to do to get you to go away? Well, vote. Let's get it done. Can you make this commitment right now? Are you going to go tomorrow? And we actually have an app that we just built with our friends over at Numenar. I know you know these guys too. They're just light years ahead of anything in the tech space. We actually built an app with Numenar where you can actually track on your contact list of your friends and your family who's returned their absentee ballot, have they requested it, have they voted early, so you can start bugging your friends and family too.
And you've got websites where people can go in some of these states where they can actually skip the line, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's funny because when we started this, in general, the Republican Party was nervous about embracing absentee early vote. And so in January, one of the first things we did was a series of focus groups about how to talk about absentee ballot early vote. And we found the best message was around convenience. It's more convenient to vote early. You can skip the line. So all of our websites, all of our campaign materials are skip the line pa.vote, skip the line mt.vote. So you can literally have a one-stop shop for all of your Senate and presidential resources on voting early. And then the second message that was actually really good was the military. So, you look at the military, they've been voting by mail and absentee for decades. If it's safe for them, it can be safe for us as well.
Yeah, and when we talked to J.D. Vance last week, he emphasizes, like, look, maybe it's not the system I would have come up with where there's election month instead of election day, but you got to play with the game as it exists because the other side's playing the game. Okay, so I'm curious, y'all been out there in the field now for months doing all of this hard work in these states. What are the little nuggets out there of things that have changed based on your work that makes you really hopeful for a good result here in November?
So I brought some sexy stats,
yes,
is what we like to call them.
We did process, and now we're doing stats.
I know. This is a real page turner. I get it, but the stuff matters.
This is important.
So let's just nerd out together and embrace it. So the stuff that makes me excited knowing that we're making a difference in a state like Pennsylvania, which is really, really tight, is that the GOP is outperforming 9% better in the net ballot compared to this point in 2020. Mm-hmm. And so 2020, remember, everybody was voting by mail. So this was COVID laws. So at our height, we're outperforming that by 9%, which means we finally got our act together. And so from our efforts, we've actually been able to move 120,000 Republican voters onto the permanent absentee list. Wow. Which is huge. So last time we were together, that number was at 40,000. Wow, so it is a major muscle movement. And what's even better about these numbers is a third of them are low propensity voters. So they've only voted one of the last 4 elections. So these are our numbers that are almost guaranteed to close the margins. Remember, we only lost by 200,000 votes last time. Mm-hmm. So if these 120,000 are automatically getting their ballot and they just have to return it, that's so much easier to close the gap.
Well, and that's going to pay dividends here cycle after cycle. I mean, in Arizona, the permanent early voter list allowed us to win statewide elections for a generation.
Yes.
Dominating there is huge.
100%. And we used to be really good at this.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
When you look at Arizona, you look at some of the McCain footprint, we were good at this, and that muscle has just atrophied the last decade. But we're bringing it back in Pennsylvania, and we're going to show that this is the way you win elections. I mean, I look at these numbers of where we are today versus where we were 2 years ago, 4 years ago, and then where we are against Democrats. So Republicans in Pennsylvania, we've generated over 350,000 vote by mail requests, which at this same point, this same date in 2022, we were only at 172,000. So we've almost doubled it, which is great. And then in 2020, only 35 GOP voters used vote by mail for every 100 Democrats who did so. Now we're at 42 GOP voters for every 100 Dems. So we're closing that gap where they have already been light years ahead of us. We're closing that gap to be on par, ultimately, which is what our goal is. I also think Democrats, I'm not going to go so far as saying they kind of sat this one out, but they're definitely resting on their laurels. They have not put as much muscle into their machine that you would normally have seen, especially when you think about 2022 with Stacey Abrams. That was everywhere. That same muscle you're not seeing from the Democrat governor of Pennsylvania on their side. And I think that's allowed us to catch up and them to stay on par. And now we have an even ball game. It's why McCormick's tied. It's a statistical tie right now.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think they know what we all know. And if you look at a lot of the polling, that the more people who vote, actually, the better Donald Trump does. And that hasn't always been the way, the
Right.
way things have been in the past for Republicans. But maybe they're just not as excited about turning everyone out to vote now.
And I think they had like a major enthusiasm gap with Biden.
Right.
And again with the ABEV program, absentee ballot early vote program, it's a spring program. You can't start absentee ballot generation on October 1st.
Yeah.
You don't have enough time. And you've missed all the deadlines. So in the spring, they were still Biden at the top of the ticket, and they weren't doing the work to invest in their program. Now, I didn't tell anybody that.
Yeah.
We didn't sound the alarm in the spring. It's okay to talk about it now because that's all behind us. But they really, I think, rested on their laurels, expecting that the machine would be there. It wasn't. There wasn't enthusiasm for Biden. By the time Harris got onto the ticket, they had like literally gone through many of the state and local jurisdiction deadlines. And so now they're playing catch up. And that's where we have to kind of stick to our plan, finish it through, keep going deeper on our list, and make sure that we are knocking doors and hitting our deadlines all the way up until Election Day.
Yeah. Jess, if people want to find out more about how they can get involved with Sentinel Action Fund, how they can support your work either financially or in a volunteer basis, hitting these doors towards the end of the race, where do they go? What do they do?
Well, first off, we need the help. So if anyone's thinking about, should I knock a door? Should I send a text? Can I give an hour or two? Please reach out to us, sentinelactionfund.com. We've got a module on there where you can drop us a note and we'll plug you in to our volunteers that are on the ground. Even if you're just like, hey, I have a long weekend, I'd like to deploy to Pittsburgh, we'll put you to work for those 3 days. Everybody needs to help. And if you have an hour or you have 10, there's something that you can do to help with turnout and talking to your friends and family and neighbors and getting your own contact list figured out. Download our app. You can put it right on your phone. You can make sure your mom, that she's requested her absentee, that she's turned it in, that she has a plan. And it sorts by state, which is also really nice. Like my contact list is states, people all across the country. And so it'll sort you by state with the dates that are relevant for your state, which also makes it really easy.
That's huge.
Can I make one recommendation? A little bit of a twofer. Ohio State plays at Penn State this year in a couple of weeks. We're going to have a captive audience. Probably 150, 200,000 people out there tailgating.
Yep.
I think that's a perfect place to knock tents instead of doors.
Yes. I was even suggesting to a mutual friend of ours that they should host a rally, and you can only come in if you have a little button that says I registered to vote and I already made my plans to vote. Like instead of paying cover at the door, have your voter registration at the door.
Hey, dude, the left has been doing stuff like
For
that
years.
forever.
Yeah.
Remember 2 Chainz in downtown Atlanta?
Oh, yeah.
We need that sort of star power, which we have now, right? We've got Elon Musk, we've got Kid Rock, we're getting there. So I'm feeling hopeful.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks for all your hard work out there. Really appreciate you stopping by. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I'm really glad we had her back because it's interesting to hear her, several months ago when they were first starting this project, and then now to hear that they've hit like 1.4 million doors, and they have all of these websites stood up where people can not stand in line and they can actually start the voting process from their homes.
Yeah, and I'm especially glad we were able to have her on this episode. It's a perfect segue from all of our discussions earlier about what Elon Musk was saying and voting early and absentee by mail and all of that sort of stuff. These are the folks on the ground doing the job, and it sounds like, they're really coordinating as much as they can legally with the Trump campaign and these other entities that are out there that are doing the work and knocking on doors and getting votes in the bank.
Yeah, look, it is interesting. For those who follow the ins and outs of all of this, there's always the compare and the contrast with Democrats, right? And large part because Democrats have had this built-in organized labor effort on ground game forever, where it's been seamlessly integrated even before it was legal to do so within the Democratic Party. And so their ground game is their ground game. It just kind of is what it is. And Republicans have had to adopt a bunch of different ways of accomplishing the same thing because you don't have the leadership of an entire form of employment in this country doing the work for you. And so you've got groups like Sentinel, America PAC, which Elon is a part of, and others that are all trying to work together to try to do what Democrats have done for years. I'll be interested to see how it works, but it sounds like, at least from that report, we're making progress. So With all that, listen, remember your question of the day. Why did they finally get Kamala out of the basement and onto all these various interviews?
Such a good question. Why did they do this?
Why did they do that? It does seem like, I don't know. I haven't seen all the clips, but none of them seem particularly good. You know what I mean?
No one ever said, let Kamala be Kamala.
Literally, what's great about America? And she's like,
I got
nothing. I don't know. It's streetlights, bicycles.
Yeah.
So anyway, interested in your thoughts on that. You got to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. I want to thank everybody for buying the hats that we had JD lined up in last week. We sold a lot of hats. There's an awful lot more, so get on there and get them. Got other cool stuff too while you're at it. Because, look, all that stuff helps us do more stuff. And that's what we're trying to do here in the month of October. Really pushing the 3-day-a-week thing and everything else. Hats off. You guys, I'm appreciating the energy that this crew is bringing.
Well, it means everything for me for President Trump to win and for me to help save this country. So that's why I do it.
Just like carrying the program on your shoulders. Smug.
Big shoulders, heavy weight.
Well, you're so selfless, and that's what we've learned to love about you, Smug. With that, I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode, gentlemen. Thank you so much to Jessica Anderson, and thank you so much to the Minions. Remember, answer that question, like, and subscribe if you have not yet. So, until next time, Minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Thursday. Stay ruthless.